They laughed at him in every meeting. Not loudly, not cruelly enough to get in trouble. Just enough, a smirk here, a rolled eye there. A quiet joke passed between two coworkers, while he sat at the end of the table saying nothing. His name was Elias. He was 28 years old, and in 5 years at that company, he had said maybe 500 words in meetings combined. While everyone else fought to be heard, Elias watched. While everyone else defended their ideas loudly, Elias wrote his down and waited. They called him the ghost. They said he had no ambition. They said quiet people don't make it to the top, that the world belongs to those who speak first, speak loud, and speak often. Elias never argued with them. He never explained himself. He just kept showing up, kept doing the work nobody saw, kept building something in silence that no one at that table understood yet. 3 years later, half of the people who mocked him would be working for him. This is the story of how silence, the very thing they used to insult him, became the weapon nobody saw coming. And by the end, you'll understand why the quietest person in the room is often the most dangerous one. Elias hadn't always been quiet. As a teenager, he was the loudest one in every room, the boy with an opinion on everything, the one who needed to win every argument, the one who filled silence like it was an enemy. Then, at 19, he pitched a business idea to a room full of investors. He talked for 20 minutes straight. He interrupted questions. He oversold. He filled every gap with words because silence felt like losing. He didn't get the deal. Afterward, one investor pulled him aside, not to comfort him, but to correct him. "You talked so much, I never got to think," the man said. "You didn't give me room to want it. You just gave me noise." That sentence lodged itself in Elias like a splinter. For weeks he replayed it. He realized something uncomfortable. He had mistaken talking for confidence and volume for value. He had spent years performing certainty instead of building it. So he made a decision that would shape the next decade of his life. He would stop trying to be the loudest person in the room. He would become the most observant one instead. It wasn't natural. It wasn't easy. Every instinct in him screamed to fill the silence, to defend himself, to prove his worth out loud. But he forced himself to sit in discomfort, to listen twice as much as he spoke, to let others finish, to let silence do work that words couldn't. He didn't know it yet, but he was rebuilding himself from the inside out. Silence, Elias learned, wasn't empty. It was full of observation, full of patience, full of information everyone else was too busy talking to collect. While his coworkers spent meetings competing to speak, Elias spent them studying. He noticed which clients hesitated before answering. He noticed which manager repeated himself when he was insecure about a decision. He noticed the exact moment a negotiation shifted, not from what was said, but from what wasn't. He started writing these observations down every night. Patterns, weaknesses, opportunities. Nobody else was tracking because they were too busy trying to be seen. 6 months in, a major client relationship was falling apart. Two senior managers had already tried to fix it with long emails and longer calls, both talking over the client's concerns to defend the company. Both failed. Elias asked for 15 minutes with the client. He said almost nothing. He let the client vent, uninterrupted, for the first 10 minutes. Then he asked one question. "What's the one thing that would make you trust us again?" The client answered, and in that answer was everything the other two managers had missed while busy explaining themselves. Elias fixed the account in one conversation, not because he was smarter, because he had finally learned that most people don't want to be convinced. They want to be heard. And the only way to truly hear someone is to stop talking long enough to let them speak. That one meeting quietly changed how leadership saw him. Recognition didn't come fast, and that was its own test. For 2 more years, Elias watched louder, flashier colleagues get promoted around him. People who talked confidently in meetings, even when they hadn't done the work. People who took credit fast and loud, even for ideas that weren't fully theirs. There were nights Elias sat alone in his apartment, staring at the ceiling, wondering if the investor's old lesson had been wrong, if maybe the world really did belong to the loud, and quiet discipline was just a slower way of losing. He almost changed. He almost forced himself back into performing confidence instead of building it, just to keep up. But he remembered something his grandfather used to say, back before he passed. A quiet river carves the deepest canyon. It just takes longer than the flood. So Elias stayed the course. He kept listening in meetings while others postured. He kept writing down patterns while others chased applause. He kept building trust quietly with clients and coworkers who had started coming to him, not because he demanded attention, but because he had never once wasted theirs. Then the company lost its biggest client in a public, humiliating failure. Leadership panicked. In the emergency meeting, the loudest voices offered the loudest excuses. And when the CEO finally asked, "Does anyone actually have a plan?" the room went silent. Elias raised his hand, not dramatically, just once, calmly, and said, "I do." He had been preparing for this moment without knowing it. For 3 years, in silence. While others were busy being heard, he laid out exactly what the client needed, using patterns he'd tracked from a dozen quiet observations nobody else had bothered to make. He didn't oversell it. He didn't perform confidence. He simply presented what he knew to be true, calmly, in under 5 minutes. The room that once called him the ghost went completely still. Not because he shouted, because, for the first time, they realized he'd been the only one actually paying attention the whole time. The plan worked. The client stayed. And 6 months later, Elias was promoted, not to a manager, but to the director overseeing the very department that used to laugh at him behind his back. People asked him afterward how he did it, how he stayed so calm, so composed, for so long, while getting passed over again and again. Elias just said, "I wasn't trying to be heard. I was trying to understand." Understanding always wins in the end. It just doesn't announce itself first. The loud voices in that office eventually faded, one by one, chasing the next room to perform in. But Elias stayed, quiet, observant, and impossible to replace, because he had built something noise never could: trust, earned in silence, one unspoken moment at a time. If you've ever felt overlooked for being quiet, remember this. The loudest voice in the room rarely wins the war. It just wins the moment. And moments fade. But what you build in silence, that stays.